It's already happening, and almost nobody has connected the wires. By the time the financial press files their Monday columns, the empire we've worshipped for a decade is going to look like a different beast. Every warning flare was glowing red in plain view for 72 hours, and we kept scrolling past it. The deal is drafted, the lawyers are circling, and somewhere inside a private boardroom in Paris, a man who has spent 3 years avoiding cameras just signed his name on something that could either resurrect the dynasty or bury two of the biggest brands in modern culture under the same tombstone. So let me pull you in close, lock the door, sit all the way down. What you're about to hear is going to rewrite every Roc Nation move from the last 18 months. Once you spot the architecture, you cannot unspot it. And once you understand the math behind the panic, you'll finally see why the woman the world calls Rihanna has gone suspiciously quiet. Before we dive deeper into the abyss, you already know the move. Smash that like button, lock in that subscribe, ring the bell, because we are not running surface-level gossip today. We are dragging the whole iceberg out of the water. Let's get into it. Picture the scene. It's an ordinary Thursday. The internet is screaming about Met Gala outfits, rehashing tired feud takes, recycling exhausted opinions about who's washed. And then, from a blind spot, a corporate filing nobody was supposed to find slips out of a French registry office, a name change in the equity structure, a whisper of a transfer. That whisper belongs to Lvmh, and what they are quietly trying to do is run away from Fenty Beauty like the building is on fire. If you don't understand what that means, lean in, because this is the moment the whole story shifts on its axis. Lvmh is not a boutique investor. Lvmh is the most powerful luxury conglomerate on Earth. Bernard Arnault doesn't get into bed with a brand unless he believes it's bulletproof. When Lvmh starts inching toward the exit, it's never a casual reshuffle, it's a death knell. It's the kind of move that only surfaces when the spreadsheets have already turned a color spreadsheets aren't supposed to turn. Every time Lvmh has gone radio silent on a partner over the last decade, that partner has been hemorrhaging long before the press caught the smell. That isn't speculation, that's a pattern, and the pattern just detonated again. Let me walk you through the timeline, because the story already moved without us. We're chasing taillights. 48 hours ago, the registry filings began leaking into financial circles, not in a press release, quietly, through databases only forensic accountants stare at. The valuation on Fenty Beauty, the brand we were told was unstoppable, the brand magazines crowned the future of cosmetics, has been violently knifed in half. $2.8 billion, the number we celebrated, the number we used to argue Rihanna had outpaced every musician of her generation, that number has crumbled. The brand is bleeding hundreds of millions in shareholder value, and the silence from the principal owner has been louder than any apology tour could ever be. And then, buried in a corner of the deal documents, was the detail that broke the internet for the people paying attention. A new buyer's name, not a French house, not a beauty conglomerate, not a private equity giant. Marcy Venture Partners. Yes, that Marcy. Sean Carter's investment vehicle. The same fund he uses to maneuver in the shadows when he doesn't want his fingerprints on the front page. The analysts who recognized that name went nuclear in their group chats. Within hours, the screenshots were everywhere. Somebody clipped a buried sentence from a French business publication confirming the negotiations. Somebody else pulled a frame from a Paris paparazzi reel that may or may not show Jay-Z entering an Avenue Montaigne office that does not appear on any public schedule. And then came the wild card, a photograph. Jay-Z, in a tailored midnight blazer, sitting across from an Lvmh executive whose face has been carefully blurred. You see what's unfolding? You see how the dominoes are choreographed? Pause. Take a breath, because we need to talk about something casual observers always miss. Marcy is not a sleeping giant. It's a leveraged vehicle, an aggressive play, a fund projecting patient capital while moving like a hungry shark in a tank getting smaller every quarter. You think the previous bets on Savage x Fenty were neutral diversification? You think the cross-pollination of Roc Nation talent into beauty campaigns was coincidence? You think the tour sponsorships, the festival deals, the fashion week placements were business as usual? Nah, friend, that was a chessboard being prepared one piece at a time. Rewind 3 years of branding. Watch the captions, the partnerships, the strategic silences. Watch how Roc Nation methodically wrapped its arms around Rihanna's commercial ecosystem long before the public saw the threat.
That patience is precisely why what's unfolding right now is so genuinely terrifying. Because if those breadcrumbs from years ago were leading us to this exact takeover, what are these new signals leading us toward?
Signal 3, the LVMH Whisper Network activating. Bankers in Paris, brokers in New York, beauty consultants who normally guard their mouths like state secrets, all of them suddenly murmuring the same phrase in private: cleaning the portfolio. That's polite corporate language for cutting losses before the bleed becomes the headline. Signal 4, Marcy Venture Partners filing fresh capital allocation documents at the exact same moment Jay-Z's calendar quietly clears for an unannounced trip to France. Add it up, what does that arithmetic look like to you? Now I know what you're thinking. Okay, that's a generous pile of dots, but where's the smoking gun? I hear you, so let me slip on the speculation jacket, because I have a theory, and I think this theory is about to age phenomenally well. I believe Sean Carter has been quietly architecting this takeover since at least the back half of last year. That isn't a wild stab in the dark. Multiple investment insiders have hinted at expanded due diligence on the Fenty portfolio for months. Reports describe Marcy analysts on extended retainers, doing 18-hour modeling sessions, vanishing into rooms with valuation specialists nobody can name. The man does not slow down. He's the kind of mogul who closes one acquisition and the very next morning is plotting the next vertical to swallow. And here's the part nobody wants to admit. The Roc Nation flagship, the one we all assumed was thriving, may not actually be thriving. There were rumors when the Renaissance tour shattered records that an internal cash crisis was being plastered over by ticket revenue. People argued, eventually the noise died down. But what if the cracks never closed? What if the structural pressure simply got redistributed into something even more desperate? What if the Fenty takeover isn't expansion, but a Hail Mary disguised as a power move? Because that's what panic does. Panic doesn't release press statements, panic releases asset grabs. Hold on, stay with me, because we need to talk about what nobody dares say out loud: the Roc Nation legal firestorm. The empire is sitting in an anxious, almost paralyzed state. Everybody is whispering, everybody is waiting, and the longer the lawsuits multiply, the louder that silence becomes. The Busby litigation is still active. The D. Perez matter has not gone away. The Megan Thee Stallion situation has bled past $1.2 million in legal exposure and shows no sign of cooling. Each case is a small fire, but stack them together and you have a forest burning at every edge. A single courtroom loss wouldn't just sting Roc Nation, it would set a precedent. A single settlement could open the door to a flood. A single bad headline right now while the Fenty takeover is negotiated could blow the transaction sky high, which is exactly why the deal is moving so quickly, so quietly, so aggressively, because in this pressure cooker, you close in the dark or you watch the building collapse in the daylight. Now let's talk about rollout strategy, because this is where the real fingerprints live. Roc Nation doesn't do traditional acquisitions, no 6-month investor roadshow, no Forbes cover, no Bloomberg sit-down, no Wall Street Journal feature. That's not their game. Their game is silence and then earthquake. The Tidal acquisition had no rollout. Boom, one morning it was there, the next morning it was the loudest streaming story in music. The Duce play had no rollout. One quarter a side bet, the next a flagship pillar. You see the model? Move before the market can react. Buy when the public still thinks the asset is healthy. The smartest operators have figured out that the longer you signal your moves, the more time competitors get to price gouge you or block you outright. So you don't signal, you strike. That is the Roc Nation model, undefeated for 2 decades. The problem is, this time, the asset might not be the right one. Mini pause. Breathe, because the next part is what everybody slept on. Go back to that photograph, the Avenue Montaigne shot. I've studied this man for years. I screenshot every appearance because I know how rarely he allows himself to be captured unrehearsed. This is the first time I've seen him photographed walking into an LVMH building in a posture that read like negotiation, not celebration. He doesn't do that. He's not the casual lunch type. He's a closer. He moves in shadows. He communicates in handshakes. And then suddenly, a daylight photograph in front of a Paris luxury headquarters. That photograph is a signal, the modern equivalent of a 5-star general spotted entering the war room the night before the offensive, the financial equivalent of a man saying in the quietest possible way, "We are already in motion, the rest of you haven't been informed." Now let's get into the angle nobody is brave enough to touch. There's a theory circulating in encrypted text threads and private dinner conversations among people who move money. The Fenty takeover is not really about Fenty. It's about Paris, about France, about Europe, about a strategic foothold that has nothing to do with cosmetics and everything to do with a stage. Why Paris? Why now? Why the rumored 80,000-seat stadium bookings across France for the summer? Why has Sean Carter suddenly decided his next era is European after 20 years operating out of New York and LA? Here is where the picture gets ugly, because this is where the next character enters the chessboard. Yes, we have to say it. After Kanye West was effectively banned from performing in Paris, after the UK shut their venue doors, after European booking agencies quietly blacklisted him in a coordinated wave nobody in the press fully reported, a vacuum opened, a gigantic summer festival-shaped vacuum, and almost immediately the dates that should have belonged to the Yeezy era began appearing on a different calendar, a Roc Nation calendar. Stade de France whispers, Lyon, Marseille, Nice. The man who was once Kanye's collaborator, his closest peer, the architect of his earliest hits, is touring the exact geography Kanye was iced out of. The rumors swirling are not pretty. The icing was not random. The blackball was not organic. A single phone call from the right office can reshape a continent's concert calendar overnight. I'm not telling you that's confirmed, but the timing is impossible to ignore.
And here is where the threads stitch back into Fenty. If you're about to fund a continent-sized European takeover, if you're pouring capital into stadium production, marketing, logistics, security, hospitality, you need cash flow, real cash flow, not promised, not projected, liquid. And the most liquid asset in your orbit, the one you can leverage, restructure, refinance, use as collateral, is a beauty brand sitting inside a luxury conglomerate that wants to offload it before its valuation craters further. Suddenly, the math gets cold. Suddenly, the takeover is not a vote of confidence in Rihanna'S empire. Suddenly, the takeover is a tactical extraction, a way to get $1 billion piece of paper into a portfolio that needs ballast while the legal storms keep landing. Heat, heat, heat. I'm not the kind of analyst who throws predictions out for clicks. I'm not going to tell you the deal closes Friday midnight. Nobody outside the inner circle has that information. What I have is observation, pattern recognition, and the weight of every previous Roc Nation move stacked behind me screaming the same conclusion. Something is happening. Soon. Possibly very soon. And the person left holding the heaviest emotional bill is the woman whose face has been on every Fenty bottle for the last 7 years. Let's finally talk about Rihanna. The silence from her camp is not normal, not press strategy, not the calm before an album. It's the silence of a founder watching her empire be restructured around her in real time, while her partners negotiate her brand's future in rooms she may or may not be sitting in. Sources whisper she's been more private than any year since 2016. Sources whisper the Lvmh relationship has cooled in ways no press release will show. Sources whisper the original visionary, the woman who built this house brick by brick, may not be the one calling the shots on which front door it gets sold through. And then there's Beyoncé. No honest analysis of the Carter financials can avoid her. The whisper inside the industry is that the family flagship has been kept afloat by one engine, the Cowboy Carter Tour, the Renaissance residuals, the merchandise machine, the brand integrations. While legal fees mount on one side, the cash injections from her stadium nights have been the silent oxygen tank keeping the empire breathing. That's not a dig, that's arithmetic. And it's the kind of arithmetic that eventually demands a return, which is exactly why a Fenty-shaped pillar suddenly looks so attractive on a balance sheet that needs to start telling a different story. Now here is where it gets really wild. In the last 48 hours alone, there have been quiet murmurs from European banking insiders about asset transfers that don't add up, compliance officers asked to expedite reviews, foreign exchange desks told to be on standby, legal teams in 2 jurisdictions allegedly briefed on tight timelines. None of this is public, none of this is confirmed, but it's the exact background hum that always shows up in the weeks before a major billion-dollar transaction breaks. Connect the dots.
Now think like an executive. If you're Sean Carter sitting on a deal that will either reshape your empire or detonate it, how do you push it across the finish line? You don't announce it, you don't tease it, you don't put a date on it. So how do you build runway without building runway? You activate the unit. Let Beyoncé take cultural oxygen with a residency announcement. Let Roc Nation Sports drop a high-profile athlete deal as decoy noise. Let social media operatives seed the narrative that Fenty was always meant to live inside a black-owned holding company, not a French conglomerate. You feed the audience ego-friendly crumbs, ownership pride, black excellence narratives, founder reclamation language. You let the internet do the PR campaign for you. And when the conversation hits maximum sympathy volume, you push the button. That is what we are watching happen in real time. Quick rehook, stay with me, because the last layer is the most important. Industry observers have predicted a Roc Nation expansion into European luxury since the beginning of the year. The chatter started small, a whisper here, a financial blog post there, a vague tweet from somebody who claimed to know somebody at Marcy. I dismissed most of it as clout chasing, but then the Lvmh whisper network activated and everything shifted. Lvmh doesn't bluff. Lvmh doesn't fake leak. Lvmh doesn't pretend. When their internal posture changes, it means something. And when it changes this much, this fast, this loudly, we are weeks from a public announcement, maybe days. The pattern is undefeated. You think Sean Carter is slick? You think he can slide into Paris in a private jet and we wouldn't pull the flight records? You think we wouldn't pull every thread until the picture became unavoidable? He thinks he's slick. He knows he's slick. And he is slick because most of the culture is still scrolling past the European business sections without realizing they just witnessed the prelude to one of the biggest beauty takeovers of the decade. But not us. Not here. Not today. We saw it. We clocked it. We are ready. Before we close this out, let me drop one last layer, because there is one final piece of this puzzle I haven't seen a single mainstream outlet mention: the clause. Word in deeper compliance circles is that the proposed acquisition includes a creative control provision that would significantly reduce Rihanna's day-to-day authority over the brand she built. Not eliminate it, reduce it. Quietly, diplomatically, with language so carefully constructed that even legal teams reviewing it had to read it twice. If that clause makes it into the final paperwork, the empire we've been celebrating for years would functionally stop being hers in any meaningful operational sense. The branding would remain, the face would remain, the signature would remain, but the steering wheel would belong to a different driver. Not accidental, intentional, the same hand on the contract that has shaped every Roc Nation acquisition for 15 years.
There are people who genuinely believe Sean Carter has been operating on a multi-year master plan ever since the original Fenty valuation peaked. The long quiet between him and Rihanna's public life is not coincidence. The lack of joint appearances, the avoidance of co-branded press, the absence of red carpet photos together is part of the same calculated patience. He is removing every emotional connection from the table, clearing the room, making sure that when the transaction lands, there's no sentimental friction to slow it down. And the more I study this operation, the more I realize they don't move on the industry timeline. They don't chase trends. They don't chase quarters. They don't chase headlines. They chase ownership. So while everybody argues about Met Gala outfits, while gossip blogs recycle the same Drake versus Kendrick takes, while the experts predict the same 5 celebrity stories they predicted last month, Roc Nation is in the war room, quietly, patiently, methodically, building. And the moment they break their silence, the entire conversation flips. If you made it this far, you are a real one. Drop me a comment. Believer? Skeptic? Is the Lvmh exit the signal, or am I reading too deep into a routine portfolio review? Either way, I want to hear it. Smash subscribe, tap the bell, stay close, because the moment this deal lands, I'm the first one in your feed breaking it down. Clause by clause, number by number, the whole 9. The story isn't over, it's just opening its first chapter. Heat, heat. One last thing before you click away. Keep your eyes on the Lvmh press desk. Keep your eyes on the Roc Nation legal filings. Keep your ear to the ground for sudden Paris arrivals, banking transfers, compliance officers vanishing into long meetings, executives going dark on LinkedIn, mid-level Fenty managers being asked to sign new NDAs. Silence in this universe is the loudest sound there is, and right now, the silence is absolutely deafening. Something is coming. Stay ready. Do one thing for me before this weekends. Open the Marcy Venture Partners portfolio page, then the Fenty corporate filings, then scroll through recent Roc Nation press appearances, then open Lvmh investor relations, and look at the timestamps. Look at the cadence of the updates. Look at how the language has subtly shifted. Look at how certain executive names are quietly disappearing from public bios within days of each other. That's not coincidence. That's coordinated repositioning. And once you recognize the pattern, you will never look at this empire the same way again. This is the part of the cycle they always run through right before they close. The pre-acquisition silencing, the executive reshuffling, the cross-pollination of legal teams. Every single time, without exception, and it has started. Let me close with one final thought. We've spent a decade watching one of the most consequential business empires in modern entertainment history. We've seen alliances form, partnerships shatter, careers rewritten in real time. We've watched one man, quiet, focused, locked in, turn the entire industry upside down without ever needing to do more than sign a contract at a time. And now, just as the public was getting comfortable thinking the empire had reached its final stable form, just as everybody was settling into the assumption that the story was nearly written, the same operator is back on a different continent, dropping deal documents into Paris registries at hours when nobody is supposed to be watching. If that doesn't tell you the next chapter is loading, I don't know what will. Mark this video, come back when the announcement breaks, tell me I called it. Until then, stay ready, stay locked, stay tuned. The next move is the loudest one. The countdown has already started. The patterns never lie. The silence told us everything. The signal was always the exit. The next move is the loudest one. The countdown has already started. The patterns never lie. The silence told us everything. The signal was always the exit.